want to thank everybody for being here. We've got Michelle Waffle Otero here. We've got JT Otero here. And we've got Alicia Wilder here. And we are talking about episode 7 of X-Men 97, titled Bright Eyes. There's no other way to put this. A lot happened in this episode. Like, it was a lot going on. Like, I remember watching it the first time, and then I sat down to watch it again to take notes for this live. I'm like, oh my God, like, the sheets of notes I had just kept going and going and going. I guess I realized prima facie just how much we had going on. But we'll hop right into it. So this episode begins with the funeral. The funeral for Remy LeBeau. It's raining. Nightcrawler, Sean's here. Nightcrawler giving a great eulogy. Jubilee's very upset. He's very upset. Why isn't Rogue here? Rogue saved all of us, you know. And Wolverine, as always, because he's the old war hat, you know, has like the most insightful thing about grief is a lonely road, and she's got to figure it out for herself. And then, of course, with that, we immediately cut to Rogue attacking a secure military facility and just like going ham on the place. We cut to General Ross, who's inside, who's sort of like unconcerned, sipping his coffee. Like, you forget this place was built to hold the Hulk, and then she rips it open like a Campbell's can of soup. Like, no problem. So we will talk about that. Anything involving the funeral, anything involving the scene with Rogue attacking. Michelle, we'll start with you.
It just like brought back all the feels. I thought we were done, with episode 5, but once that scene happened, we got a lot of really good cameos. Like his ex-wife, I think his brother was there. I mean, obviously, like most of the X-Men, and it was hard. It was hard. Like the feels were coming back for that one. Yeah, yeah.
JT, what did you think?
Yeah, same. You thought it went past, and all of a sudden they brought them right back. But that redemption with Rogue just tearing through kind of loosened it up, like lightened it up. You felt that revenge. She was out for blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think anybody who's been wronged, I guess, even if you were wrong to that point, could sort of understand the level of wanting revenge that you might phrase as justice. But let's be honest, she just wanted to crack some skulls and get down to it. How about you, Alicia?
I mean, I totally agree with Michelle that the funeral brought the feels back. I was like finding myself getting teary-eyed watching it again and like really connecting with how Jubilee was feeling in that moment, because at first I was like, where is Rogue? Like, why is she not here? And then to get to cut right to it and seeing her just kicking butt was really awesome. And I love a moment where the mutants are underestimated, in that moment where he was like, oh, this is built to hold the Hulk, like we're fine, and she just scatters through the building is just, it's such a testament to her strength and her power, but also the emotion behind what was happening for her there. And I think that last week we didn't get any follow-up on this at all. So I had this like pent-up feeling of like, when do we get to tackle this? Like, I have a lot of feelings I haven't had a chance to process yet. And so I think we all can associate or empathize with Rogue a little bit in that need for just vengeance and to get something out of that moment. So I thought it was very, I don't know, easy to connect with.
Yeah, and we got a great Rogue line in there when she says to Ross, "Daddy always said it was a lot easier to break into prison than break out of it," which is such a classic line. I feel like as I'm talking about all this, I'm meeting Lenore Zan tomorrow, and I just feel like, and you know how that is. Like, I'm trying to think of like the 15 different things I want to say, and I'm debating if that's going to be one of the things or not. So yeah, after that, we kind of like move into the scene. We like cut to Cyclops is basically having a hologram video chat with the president, and you get a sense of the president sort of balancing the politics of this whole thing. Like we need to be careful about what we do and what we don't do because the tide is shifting on this thing. To somebody like Scott who feels very guilty about what happened on Genosha and knowing there's a possibility that there's still potentially living people underneath all of this, or living mutants underneath all this rubble, who, of course, wants to be involved and just feels like saying politics is the last thing we need to be talking about right now, but it is sort of like, you know, the unfortunate reality of these things. And I think in that scene after that video chat, he's talking to Jean, and I think this is where you begin to see Scott's sort of frustration, because he even says like Magneto warned us about this, i.e., saying Magneto was right. But then he kind of like, I thought it was really interesting the way he kind of flips that around, because then immediately after that he says we need to get there and we need to show people that times like these are when dreaming matters most. So it's like at one hand saying Magneto was right, he's also saying, but we still need to. He wouldn't phrase it this way, but we still need to, you know, do the Professor X vibe on this thing. That whole scene was a fantastic exchange. Alicia, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I really love the way that Scott sort of threw in his face the, oh, well, if Genosha looked more human, would you react differently? And this really calling him out on the disregard for life versus optics in that moment, I think is really important, especially with the Toby interview that happened like right before of like, we're trying to create all these optics around the situation. So if you actually want to improve mutant human relations, wouldn't you want there to be more humanitarian aid for the mutants instead of being like, oh, well, it's good that they're dead. Like, let's not continue to look for them, I think. And the way he says like, oh, well, don't you want me to stay in power? Like, are someone worse for the cause? And you're just like, you're just gaslighting right now. That's not real.
Sean is right. The president did hit Cyclops with an optic blast. Like that was, I don't know if that was intended to be punny, but probably not the best thing to say at that point in time. JT, what did you think about all that?
I could feel Cyclops' frustrations. He's been dealing with this type of stuff since, like you said earlier, the Friends of Humanity and all that, and attack on his people on U.S. soil, basically, is like, yeah, it's just a major slap in the face. It's basically like you're not even helping your own citizens out. But yeah, I could feel his frustration, and I'm surprised he hasn't switched just to Magneto's just plan the whole time.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's coming.
That's what I keep wondering, if this eventually won't, like a season or so down the road, lead to like Cyclops' villain era. Because if that happens and we sort of like go through schism and that kind of stuff, that could be a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Michelle, what'd you think?
I think Cyclops has just really, he's going through a lot, and this, on top of all of that, is really hard for him. And I think he's getting tired of the bullshit. He's just like, listen, we are doing everything by the book. We're doing everything that the UN and the government has asked of us. All we're asking is for help, like trying to find survivors, and the US is not even willing to help them with that. Because how does it look? Exactly like President Kelly said. It's like, it's an election year and I want to help you out, bro, but you know, can't, like, you know, what did they say in politics? Like sending, like,
Thoughts and prayers.
love, yeah,
Thoughts
thoughts
and
and prayers.
prayers. Thoughts
That's
and
that's basically what he's doing, and it's just very interesting how it's kind of mimicking like life right now as well. Like there's a lot of like weird politics stuff going on, and it's kind of heavy. And I think Cyclops is all of us right now, where he's just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna do the best I can, and I'm gonna try to save like whatever's left of Genosha. And after this, fuck around and find out, America. Like,
Yeah.
And I'm gonna love this blonde China who here says, Kelly ain't shit. Where's Mystique at with the pew pew? Like,
That's
we're
fun.
just like condoning presidential assassination on this slide. Whatever. Like, I'm not gonna condone or not condone it at this point. I feel like the world's changed a lot, and the whole "oh no, the president's in danger" genre isn't what it used to be because
Mhm.
okay. But anyway, before I go off into the weeds on that one and get canceled. Anyway, so we get this scene, and I think it's amazing here where like the X-Men land on Genosha, which of course this is like, now we don't know how long this has been, a couple days, couple weeks, but it's interesting. And right off the bat, as they land, you see a lot of mutants working to clean up the mess, which is a total switch from when we saw Genosha in seasons past, where mutants were there working as slaves.
Mhm.
Where it's like, when you think about it, like as mutants in this land, they were as slaves forced to build, and now they're forced to, as free mutants, essentially rebuild what's been destroyed. Um, I know that was intentional. You can't tell me it wasn't. And we kind of get this thing where Trish Kilby and the cameraman come up and talk to Beast. I just want to point out the cameraman is the most important character in X-Men 97. And I'm going to tell you why, if y'all don't know. He is designed off of Sean, who's in the chat here, who's the producer of the show, who I've been frequently told is my like long lost twin brother. And as Sean pointed out to me, the cameraman is in episodes 2, 5, and 7, which are the three best episodes of X-Men. So anytime you see that cameraman,
Yeah, we did.
something's important's going to happen. So I'm going to let that one lie. In any event, okay, I got to like get back on track here. He knows about it. But so I kind of like, I want to take that part because there's more to that, but it happens a couple scenes later. So that little part I'm going to set aside while we get into this thing, because there was a lot to talk about in this episode. But as we go to the scene where Rogue shows up at this snowy cabin, and he's immediately confronted by Captain America, which, we saw the shield in the trailer. We all got really excited, like, Sean, cameraman for life. That's right. But and so we have this really interesting exchange between Rogue and Captain America, where he's talking about like, oh, they already got Guy Rick out of here. That's who I was here looking for to lead us to Trask. He adjusts the radio. Blue-eyed purple people eater starts playing, and they go down to the secret base where there's this group called OZT. And Rogue just says, oh, cool. Well, if Guy Rick got moved to Mexico City, let's just go get him. And what do you get from Steve Rogers? Essentially the same thing you got from the president. Like, wearing this outfit, Captain America colors, I can't just charge into Mexico City because that's going to send a really, really wrong message. Oh, and so Rogue says, like, oh, well, basically takes his shield and chucks it like 10 miles. Is just, Rogue ain't playing right now. But anyway, that's the scene that we want to talk about right here. JT, what'd you think?
So this was interesting to me because Captain America, he's supposed to be standing up for the little guy. He's supposed to. I don't know if it's continuous with the comics or MCU, but what about Civil War? He completely took a stand against America to stand up for the superhero. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I felt about that scene. It was I felt Rogue's anger the whole time.
Mhm.
He would have done the same thing. Just chuck his shield, be on with it. Do what she needs to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Alicia?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see the parallel between what happened with Cyclops and the president and what happened here. And I think the thing that's frustrating to Rogue is that her and Cap seem to have a relationship and an understanding. And the fact that they're going here and there's this underground base and all of this stuff. It's like he should know that there's more to the story, and he's basically being manipulated to just not do anything at the moment, and he's not seeing. I feel like he often is blinded to his like what he actually wants to fight for because he feels this like loyalty that he has to show to America and the government, even though they're oftentimes the ones who are ruining everything. When she threw his shield so far, I was just like, yes. The sassiness of, oh, if your hands are tied, you won't be needing this is just so good. And like the look she gives him at the end, I feel like is such an important moment too, because they like make eye contact and she's like, you know, I had to do that, right? Like, come on, man, help us out. You're not going to? All right, I gotta go. So I'm interested to see if he comes back at all, if he decides to be on their side, like as we get into this ending of the season, sort of who is on the mutants team, why have him there if there's not some other significance, like for the story long term. So I'm interested to see how that plays out too.
Yeah. Michelle?
I like what Alicia is touching base on. Like, why is Captain America there? I mean, I know that Rogue was an Avenger at some point. I don't know if that is the continuity within the animated series. So it is interesting to see, like, if that's setting up like some other kind of plot point in the future. Or is it maybe going to set up Avengers versus X-Men? Because, she's basically saying, like, you're not here for us. We've, like, done stuff for you. You've seen what's going on, and you're just going to, like, ignore it. Like, and then she yeeted that shield.
Yeah, and there's an argument. Cap's behavior in this. There are two arguments. Like you can make either argument with this is whether Captain America would act that way. Like you got MCU Captain America, who at one point in time didn't want to become official under the government because his thinking is that what if there's someplace we need to go and they don't let us? On the flip side, speaking of canon, especially through the printed books, there have been plenty of times where Captain America was very much a yes sir man, very much I'm a soldier, I follow orders. So you could literally make an argument either way on that. I'm not going to get into that, but I do like what you're saying with Avengers versus X-Men because I think this could be a really interesting litmus test, and it opens up. Now, it was one tiny little scene with Steve Rogers, but it opens the door to a whole world we have yet to see in the animated series. I feel like we could do a whole live just talking about that, like in and of itself. So here's, in some of these, I have to it's hard for this episode to go sequentially in order because it'll have a tiny little blurb and then it ties into something bigger later. So I'm going to do this more subject matter wise because we talked earlier about how the X-Men land in Genosha. Trish Tilby comes up with the cameraman anyway and gets Beast, and they leave to go have a conversation. So now we catch up to that conversation taking place, which I thought was extremely insightful. And this is where, B sort of says, riots are the language of the unheard, because we're getting this notion that since this happened, mutants across the world are not happy. Like they are rising up, they are causing disturbances. And Trish kind of says, well, I understand that, but smashing windows isn't communication. And your normal people won't accept mutants if they feel threatened by them. And you sort of see Beast. This was, I thought, very metaphorical to the African American community, the Hispanic community, the LGBTQ community, who always say, like, okay, when we behave, you throw rocks at us. When we get mad that you throw rocks at us, then we can't be trusted. So what do you want from us? You know what I mean? Beast is very frustrating. He's starting to get into the Scott line of thinking here. I really liked it, but as we go around the horn on this conversation, we'll start with you, Alicia.
I mean, I think that it's cool that we're seeing multiple perspectives of a very similar theme throughout, like with characters. And in this moment, Beast is saying, like, this is how it actually is. Like, we are actually here. Like, the way that Trish is throwing around the word normal people, and it's almost disregarding the tragedy that's happening to them and saying, well, you should act a certain way so that we view you the right way to want to help you. And Beast is like, you should just want to help us, or you could just leave. Like, I'm sorry that my existence is such a burden on your life. And I feel like it's really important for each of the characters to be taking a stand in this moment, really calling them out for what it is, and like Trish kind of takes a step back and she walks away and she's like, oh, that's not like what I meant, but it's what you said. And you have to be so mindful about what you're saying, because you're completely disregarding the fact that all of these mutants are dead or missing. And it's all about how it looks to all of them. And it's not, but how it looks is so different from how it actually is. It doesn't matter how it looks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. JT, what are your thoughts?
Basically, exactly what she said. Alicia said they're just. It's like they're not even seeing that millions of mutants were murdered. They're basically they're completely overlooking it and saying, "Oh, you can't do anything now. Your entire or the majority of your population has been decimated, and you have to just sit there and accept it." Basically, it's same thing. I don't
Right.
I don't really have too much
Like,
else to say about that
basically,
one.
it's your fault. That's what she's saying. Well, you guys acted this way, so what do you expect?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Michelle?
It's it's interesting to see everybody, like, well, everybody, I mean, like, Cyclops, Rogue, and Beast, they're all dealing with like similar situations where they're trying to help, they're trying to make things better, so they're reaching out to their resources and asking for help politely, and they're met with all of this, like, oh, well, we can't, like, the optics, or you were brought it upon yourself, or you were just born a mutant, so, like, sorry, or like, sorry, the government has steps that we have to go through, and they're all just getting fed up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to lead to the later plot point that I know we're going to talk about, where the team starts to turn a little bit on their own, like, beliefs and policies. So this is going to have ramifications down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to hold here for 1 second because I somehow managed to put a filter on mine and I don't know how. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. I bumped the wrong thing and I don't. Okay. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. And I feel like if we talk about similarities in the social sphere, these were a lot of the arguments we saw during the like arguments against the Black Lives Matter movement. That well, if you just behaved, well, if you just didn't break the law, well, if you just didn't, and it's like, okay, but yeah, but on the flip side, when you don't address an issue, or even when you do address an issue and it gets ignored, what do you expect people to do? They need to stand up for themselves. They need to protect their community. They need to be advocates for themselves. But when they do that, they're told it just makes matters worse. And I feel like through the conversation with the president and the conversation with Captain America, and now this conversation with Trish Tilby, they're portraying to us viewers that the mutants are alone. Like, nobody's got your back. Like, 5 minutes ago, you thought everything was great and nothing could be better for your cause, and right now you could be on the verge of an all-out war, and literally nobody's standing behind you. So, best of luck. Okay. So, make sure I don't skip over anything. Oh, yes. So now we get the scene where in Mexico City, where Rogue shows up to the hacienda where Gyrick is being held, and she does her thing. She does her Rogue thing. She busts in and cracks some skulls and beats everybody up, and gets alone with Gyrick, and Gyrick's like, "Oh, you're not gonna be able to make me talk this time," and she uses her powers on him and just does her Rogue thing. And we sort of like go to black on that one, and I'm gonna like hop ahead to like what happens then after, because you get Rogue wakes up and Nightcrawler is there, and I thought it was a really poignant moment because they're in Mexico City. You can tell like the Day of the Dead celebration was gone. The Day Los Muertos. My partially Hispanic wife over here, my partially Hispanic wife, going to correct me on the pronunciation, but and you see like for the first time, I think Rogue coming to grips with the fact that Remy's gone. Like she can't just hide behind the anger anymore as she sees the mourning that's going on in this cemetery, and looks, and it was so cool that like all of the X-Men were standing there like silently in support of her, like let's go do this. And then of course you have where Gyrick, we flash to Gyrick, who's in a hospital bed with an oxygen mask, and somebody walks in, a guy by the name of Bastion, and without touching the radio changes frequency to, what is it, one-eyed, one-horned, blue, purple people eater, and proceeds to suffocate Gyrick. So Gyrick no more. All of that stuff. What do you guys think? Well, we'll start with you, JT.
That was wild. Like I was not expecting that at all. One, for a kids cartoon, and then two, I don't remember Gyrick dying. So I was just like, wow, they're doing it. They're making Bastion the big baddie, the biggest baddie so far.
Mm-hmm.
Alicia?
Yeah, that was wild for me.
Yeah. Alicia, what do you think?
I mean, I totally agree with Justin that that moment was like very murdery for a cartoon, but we're not holding back, right? So we're just going for it. When Rogue wakes up and all of the X-Men are there, that was another place that really stabbed me in the heart. I can empathize with with the feeling of like pushing your feelings down to like power through and try to be the strong one of the group, and then falling apart. And also she feels so much responsibility for what's happening, and I think that it's really cool the way that Nightcrawler is there for her and is very brutally honest with her, that he understands that she's going through so much more than just the loss of Gambit. Like she says, I lost someone, and he's like, two, like he brings up Magneto, like we know that there's more here. You don't have to hide what you're actually feeling. Like, look, we're all here for you. We understand why you weren't at the funeral. We're trying to like be a part of your grieving process. Everyone grieves differently. And I think that Nightcrawler offers a really interesting perspective of compassion and understanding of how people's grieving processes are different, and that the choice that she made to go and like get her rage out, but that doesn't mean that she still doesn't need her people. So it was nice to have that outlet. And I think that one thing that's really great about this show is the way that they kind of show all of those tools that you need, right? Like we dealt with this huge trauma, this devastating experience, but now we're also going to show you different ways to cope with your trauma and how to talk to people and how to be a support network for other people. So we're not just showing you these gory moments, but we're also getting into the healing process after the fact. I think is a really important thing for the show to be demonstrating. If they're going to go into all of that kind of trauma and damage, they also need to offer the outlets for support, or at least explore those, so that the younger people watching the show can kind of understand that full perspective.
Mm-hmm. Michelle?
I mean, Alicia like hit it right on the nose, like everything. The only thing I could add would be that it was nice that while Rogue was going through her stages of grief when she was in Mexico City, and she was at her like she was like finally releasing the pain and letting go, that the entire team was there for her. And I feel that the entire team is all on the same page at this point, where we're like, listen, we've gone, jumped through the hoops, we've asked for help, and we're not getting it. So as a team, we're gonna go take this guy down. We're gonna go. They want to fuck around. They're gonna find out. Yeah. Also, I don't know if we're gonna talk about this later, but we are gonna talk about who got rescued at Genosha, right?
Who got what?
Rescued.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Making
but
sure.
I feel like I want to make that as a T-shirt that just says like X-Men, fuck around and find out. Like I feel like that needs to be like the new hashtag for the X-Men going forward. You know.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Make sure we. Yeah. Speaking of which, we're like gonna like hop right into that. Where Scott and Jean are helping clear the rubble. Um, and it was interesting in Jean, which you would understand, like somebody who's a telepath, how she's struggling a little bit, just like because of her abilities, that there are what she calls so many echoes, like the echoes of so many people dying in one place. It's like on the psychic plane, this place is scarred, and it's just like, penetrating to her. And you can tell she's kind of distraught, like so many lives cut short, so many futures not seen. And it was interesting in that moment where I think Scott and Jean finally got to a point of level with the whole like Madeline thing. Because earlier she even said to him, "I know what she meant to you," which was not the way she felt previously, right? um, and I don't know if you caught this. There was a great scene in there where there was a shattered window, and Jean stepped in front of it, and in every single fractal, you saw a reflection of Jean. Like it was sort of like, metaphorically, kind of like helping to explain what was going on. Um, and so, yeah, this is what's great. She gets like all of a sudden this ping that someone is alive and it's a psychic, and they run, and a bunch of the mutants get excited. Yeah, and you see this a lot in these major disasters like 9/11, where after so long, like just finding one person alive like renews the hope. And of course it's Emma Frost. Of course it's got to be Emma Frost in pure diamond form, which I love. And of course, what is her line? "I've always done well under pressure." You got to expect Emma to drop an Emma line all the time. Um, we'll just, and then very quickly after that, as like an addendum to that scene, Morph calls all of them and says, "Hey, you guys got to get to the X Jet. It's Trask." And they all go there, and Trask is distraught over video chat, like, "Hey, I tell you what, come to the UN building in Madripoor. I'm going to show you what's going on," and kind of drops a hint, like, "By the way, they're never out of dying." So we'll stop there, and go around the horn. JT, what'd you think?
Oh, I knew when she said it was a psychic, I knew it was Emma, and she had to be Diamond. I knew it right away. I was like, "There's no way it could have been anyone else." But yeah, that was great. But that just leads into like future storylines with Emma and Scott possibly. So it's, or even like what's that? Gen X,
Mm.
but New Mutants.
Mm-hmm.
So future stories opens up a whole lot more for seasons 2 and 3 beyond. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I will say that'd be cool. Like X-Men '97, like on Disney Plus. Let's get like three other spin-off shows. Let's get Uncanny Avengers. Let's get Generation X. But I will say, if you're gonna do a Generation X animated show, make it look like Bacello. Make it look like his art, 100%. Wouldn't that be the most amazing thing on the planet?
I would
Uh,
die.
but
so
anyway,
good.
I'm sorry, Alicia. What do you think?
Okay, well, the moment, the sort of like a bittersweet moment that I had at the end of the crumbling of Genosha was like a, are we gonna get Emma in diamond form? Like, is that coming? And so I have to admit that I'm gonna say something that might be a little controversial, in that I was a little disappointed with the reveal, because I was envisioning like her emerging from the wreckage in like this position of strength and power, and instead she was like, you know like saved. But I at first I was kind of upset about it. I was like, okay, I got this moment, but I wanted her to be this beacon of strength, and she's very weak in that moment, that she's, crushed by a building, obviously. But then I rewatched the episode, and I really retrospectively was like listening to the things that Scott was saying. He kept bringing up like that we need to find one more person. There needs to be something that is our beacon of hope. And so then you can really see that Emma is that, is this beacon of hope. And so I lessened my disappointment a little bit, and we still got Emma Sass, and she is still bringing hope, and we hopefully will get more more Emma storyline in the future. But I want to also point out something that Blanchana said in the chat was like the moment that Scott thought that the telepath might be Maddie and it wasn't, and he like was sad about that, but Jean was has come to a place with him where she's like really understanding his perspective of their relationship a little bit more. So that moment she kind of touches him on the shoulder like, it's okay, like for you to be upset about this, I thought was a really great moment too.
Yeah. Michelle?
I think this moment is setting up a long game story. I think if you notice the moments before all this that were between Jean and Scott, like they're still dealing with their stuff, and I don't think they're going to recover from this. I don't think that Jean and Scott will get back together. And when Scott realizes that the survivor is not Maddie, he is really distraught. But the fact that the survivor is Emma, I think this is gonna like trauma bond them a little bit. I think they will have this will start like the conversation between them, and I think it will build like a natural connection between the two rather than this like weird like affair thing that happened in the comics. So I think through this traumatic event, Scott and Emma will come together a little more naturally, and I like what I'm seeing there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, in the because as we saw in episode 5, it was sort of alluded to that Emma caught on what was going on in the psychic plane between Scott and Maddie there, so she's like somewhat aware of what's going on.
She can fix him.
Yeah.
Okay.
She is and that's exactly right. When they pulled her out of the rubble, and she drops her, of course, her Emma line, and they take her away, and a tear ran down Scott's cheek, which was really heartfelt. And then when I went through and watched it the second time, and now I'm a little bit more of a jokester, my instant thought was, it's a tear of joy because Scott's like, I'm gonna tap that too. So that's because that's Scott's history. He's the nice guy, but he ends up the player in the X-Men because, yeah. I forgot where I was. Yeah, I get caught in the Scott and Emma drama, and I can just okay. So there we go. So earlier in this thing, when they first land in Genosha, because I'm like having to Quentin Tarantino this whole live, and we're just like bouncing everywhere with this, and Jubilee and Roberto are sort of having this conversation about like hey, like you'd probably want to tell your parents because the last thing you want to do is them to find out that you died on the news, an attack like this, and they're burying a stranger. And Roberto finally comes around and says okay, and says to Jubilee, will you come with me? And she's like, of course I will. So now we catch up to the scene where they're actually going to see Roberto's mom. And of course the penthouse is very bouge, like there's doormen everywhere, and Jubilee even says, yeah, no kid raised this way comes out normal. And they go in, and he just flat out says it to his mom, like, hey, I'm a mutant. And then we come to find out she's known for a long time. Like, you set 2 of your rooms on fire, and a yacht burned, and like, come on, we were waiting for you in your own time to come to us, which feels like a very heartfelt kind of moment, sort of like, and it is sort of like mirroring the thing where it's like when a child is really concerned because they've at some point in time figure out that they're somewhere in the LGBTQ spectrum, and they're struggling with the having to tell their parents, or the parents like, oh yeah, I know. So what, but then this all gets flipped around when she's like, so by the way, we need to find a way to keep this secret because shareholders, and if they find out that our kid's a mutant, it's going to cause all kinds of problems. And you could see, Roberto, like his jaw is just kind of on the floor, like, oh shit. So packing in that scene, we'll go the other way around the horn. Michelle, what are your thoughts on that?
It was very much alluding to like a coming out story almost. I mean, I can't speak on that like personally, but it gave us a like a good example of how it could feel for somebody,
Mhm.
you know, and having a supportive friend like Jubilee saying like, "Hey, you know, I went through this with my parents, and you know, if something did happen to you, I think they would want to know." I think she said like a really important line where she said like she didn't want her parents to think that she was somebody else and that they had to find out on the news like who their child really was. So she said it was really important that he had that conversation with his parents, and that way he wouldn't feel so like he has to hide himself, because he very much is like hiding who he is. That's why he wouldn't fight. He didn't want to use his powers in public, or just because somebody could see him using his powers and it could get back to his parents, who are, you know, very high profile like business people. I don't know if they're famous or if they're well known, but it's once again, it's optics. It's
Mhm.
that theme of optics. And then when his mom is just like, oh, you know, I knew, and she's acting very supportive, but then she's saying like, but we can't tell anybody. So
Mhm.
she's telling him that he still has to keep everything repressed. And she's also kind of alluding to that maybe he can't be friends with Jubilee and the X-Men.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. JT, how about you?
I love how this show is mirroring real life and how it represents communities and their experiences. It just hits so close to home to so many people. Like scrolling through Instagram stories, you just see so many people posting and like thanking the writers
Mhm.
for being seen and how close it is to their personal experiences. I just love how the whole season so far has mirrored real life situations, and they're doing such a good job at relating to its audience that I don't think there's been a better cartoon ever, to be honest.
Mhm. I agree. Alicia?
I mean, I think I first second everything that Michelle and Justin said, and I also am liking getting to know Roberto as a character in the way that we're getting to know him. That he himself isn't really telling us about himself, but the way he handles himself in different situations or his experiences are giving us a better understanding of who he is. Like we met him at the beginning of the show and he was like trying to negotiate his way out of being trapped, right? Of being captured. This idea that like money here can solve the problem. His mom is modeling that in this moment. It's saying like, all right, like this is the thing, this is the situation. Now, how do we handle this situation going forward? Like, let's make some rules about who you associate yourself with, and let's be mindful about how much of that we put out there. And it's so true that we're getting that same parallel of like, I see you, but the rest of the world can't see you. We have to kind of tweak who you are. And I think like walking into his home and having like the first person who greets him be like the staff and not his family. And the way that when his mom brings up, you know, this, okay, let's make a plan. And then she's like, you want a spritzer? Like everything is fine. We understand why he has a difficult time forming relationships because he wasn't given real relationships growing up. And we get to see the perspective of him being hated and feared in a way that's like masking, right? Like his mom is like, "We love you, sweetie, but don't you dare tell anybody who you are," you know?
Hmm.
So I love that there's alternate perspectives too. We see these same situations that people go through in their lives, but through maybe a lens we haven't seen it before or we haven't seen it.
Hmm. And I agree 100% with everything, and I also feel like this is yet another scene in this episode that is showing the walls that are behind the mutant community. Like it's just it feels like every step along the way they're being sectioned off. They're being pushed into their own corner. And this is all happening at a time where we feel like this war
Hmm.
is kicking off. The war that mutants didn't want, and probably the war that most humans didn't want. And yet here we are now on the precipice, and it just seems like nobody has their back. Like the government doesn't have their back. Captain America doesn't have their back. This kid's own parents don't have his back, and it's just, yeah, I feel like they're pushing them towards circling the wagons time. Like it's time for everybody to come together and deal with this whole thing. So yeah, we as we have that, now we get to this Madripoor scene where the X-Men show up in Madripoor as Trask told them to walk into a room, the lobby, everybody's unconscious, and Wolverine, who says, yeah, he cleared the building because they used sleeping gas and everybody's zonked out. Morph walks up to the vending machine and says, "Oh, good, diet." Hits diet, slides to the side, secret elevator. It was really brief, but personally, I laughed hysterically at the scene where they're all crammed into this elevator, and Morph's in the back sipping on the pop that he the diet. Like, I just thought that was such a great scene, and they step out into something that is like, like a futuristic, like Dr. Frankenstein's laboratory of sentinels, where all these crazy like experiments are going on, and Beast even says like this stuff is light years ahead of technology we have now. I can't even imagine what's going on. One liner of the entire episode goes to Morph, who sees Trask and refers to him as poor man's Oppenheimer. Personally, somebody who loves dad jokes, that's on point. Morph's becoming my guy. Trask does this thing where he, basically says, and you sort of like get a peek behind him, where like when he built the Sentinels, you could tell he didn't trust mutants. He wasn't sure about where this was going, and now that it's become basically genocide, he's dealing with a ton of guilt because you sense that it's like, okay, so I wasn't full racist. I was just kind of racist. But now that everything's gone full racist, I'm kind of not cool with that. But that's the slippery slope. Like you may have had somebody who lived in Germany who wasn't 100% against Jews, but then you ended up with the Holocaust. So one always begets another. So he tries to commit suicide, and Rogue catches him, which would seem like a hero thing, but then Rogue just drops him, just lets him go. And Nightcrawler, there's of course the great difference there where Nightcrawler's like, Rogue, what did you do? And Logan's like, well, we all wanted to. Like, can't entirely argue with it. But then all of a sudden, Rogue just gets nailed. And after everything we saw at the beginning of this episode with Rogue just like tearing through mechs and a room that was meant to hold the Hulk, she just gets sucker punched and it just goes out like a light. And then so Trask is there again, and he's now like zombie cyborg sentinel. We have a giant fight that ensues. There's more to this scene, but I literally just want to like stop like with that and just get everybody's thoughts in. We'll start with you, JT.
So, little Easter egg. I don't know if you guys caught it when they were showed the soda. That's the same soda from the Hulk. What was it? The
Oh, really?
Edward Norton Hulk, where
Yeah.
the blood goes into the soda and Stanley drinks it. That was the
Oh,
same
really?
one. So I wonder if they're gonna have some sort of like Hulk cameo later on. But that's a little off the thing. I just thought that was a cool little Easter egg in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that Rogue, you could feel it. That line that she said when he's like, "Oh, I have nothing else," and she's like, "Me too." Man, it was just like boom, drop the mic on that one. But you could feel it, and there's like, I don't think anyone there blamed her for it. They're just like, I guess this is what we're doing now. This she started it off, evened it out. This is what we're doing.
Absolutely. And I feel like you may have the difference. Like we all understand Nightcrawler and the way he feels, but especially with Rogue having lost, basically Magneto and Gambit and still dealing with this whole grief thing. Yeah, she's processing anger on a different level right
Hmm.
now. How about you, Michelle?
Well, this is the find out part right here, you know? Uh, I I don't know if I believe that Trask is really feeling these things.
Mm.
I think he knew what was coming, that if he died, he was basically going to evolve into his like ultimate mutant
Mhm.
killing machine. I think he was kind of faking it. I think it was to make the X-Men look bad. Like, I don't know if there's like a film crew or anything, because this is like a building in Madripoor. There's a lot of people. And once again, word count 28 optics here. I think they're making the X-Men look bad. Like, look at Rogue murdered this
Mhm.
person. But Trask knew, because when he came back, he was still there a little bit because he mentioned it. But he said now with his new programming, he like sees things more clearly, and he make the decisions that he could now he now that he's no longer human. I think they've taken the human element out of it. So I think this is really just setting up the X-Men to look
Mhm.
bad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the X-Men are at the point where they're like, you know what, this is what you want us to be, then we're just going to be it. I think the only one who's hesitant about it is Morph, because honest,
Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler too, because of his like religious
The-
beliefs. But Morph really like says something, like he's like, oh, this is what we're doing now. And he himself has a lot of trauma from Sentinels. So these are like new types of Sentinels. So basically, like any human now can like murder them. And so
Mm-hmm.
he might be like, I don't know if we want to do this, guys. So,
Alicia?
First, just on a lighter note, I love that Morph is the comic relief of the show. They always bring like the best, like that moment in the elevator. Yeah, we're about to go to our doom right now. So thank you for delivering your soda so often. We need those moments. So I appreciate more for that. I think that it's really interesting to see how each of them are working, and the way that Trask is telling them, like, it's just gonna get worse from here. Like, you thought Genosha was bad, but it's 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 just gonna keep going. I think that's where Rogue is just like, okay, I have nothing left. Like, you just told me that I watched all of these people die and that this is just the start. And she's just had enough, like, okay, well, it is what it is at this point. But I totally agree that they're trying to make the mutants look bad. And I think that it's hard for me not to see parallels to Orchid and Krakoa in this like framing of mutants and these futuristic sentinels, and like combining humans and robots, and where that technology is going to go to overthrow, and the idea of like who's really whose side. And so just because we're so deep in Ball of X right now, it's really hard to watch the show for those parallels not to feel right in front of my face. So I'm interested to see where that goes, but I do think that they are trying to set the mutants up. They're putting them in situations that they're breaking them and causing them to cause a scene, which can then be spun to say, look how bad the mutants are. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think you're totally right on that.
Yeah, absolutely. the so this scene continues because this fight involves the building basically getting blown in half. And as they're all falling, side note, nobody gave a crap about Wolverine as he's falling. They're just like, he's fine.
he'll be
He's
okay.
It'd be
fine.
He'll
fine.
be okay.
He's he's gonna hit the ground, turn into like street pizza, and he'll be fine in like 30 seconds. It'll be okay. Um, but Scott says to Gene, you grab the people, I'll take care of the rubble, and he begins to blast the rubble. I will say, and I'm sure I noticed like a lot of people noticed this, but there was like it felt like a hell of a power jump with Gene, based on what we've seen her do in past seasons, because she basically takes half of that building and throws it over the city into the ocean, just like yeets it. Like, you thought Rogue was tough throwing a shield. She's like, I'm gonna throw half a skyscraper. Like, just launches it. But this Sentinel Prime Trask is just bodying the X-Men. I mean, even as powerful as Jean is, and she gets the upper hand on him for a second, eventually, he's like, Scott like lets the full fury of his optic blast loose on this dude, and he's just like smack. Um, and then like an EMP, like an electromagnetic pulse grenade, goes off, disables Trask, and Cable's standing there. And I felt like we all knew he was going to show up because the episode was titled Bright Eyes, and that was his nickname in the previous show. And I thought there was a really interesting exchange there where Gene like is the first one to figure out like, oh my God, this is Nate, and Cable's just like, yeah, whatever, you're not mom, out of the conversation. And Scott's like, oh my God, he's having the whole, I feel like 5 minutes ago I sent this baby to the future to live and it was really you this whole time. Cable's like, not now, Dad. We got some next level shit going on. We'll have the family reunion later. We'll just run with that. How about you, Michelle?
Well, just since we're just talking about Cable for a second, so Scott was not on board with sending his kid to the future. He was not there for the send off. But Maddie was, and she gave him good memories before she sent him off. So when Cable came back, he he was very distraught, like that he saw his mom. Like he's definitely a mama's boy for sure. So when his dad's like, "Oh my God, Nate," he's like, "Whatever, bro. Like you didn't want to send me anywhere. You want anything to do with me. You basically abandoned me." Jean's like his like stepmom that he's just like, "Yeah, nah, girl, bye." So that for him to have those emotions towards both of them, especially Scott, is fair and valid. Like, yeah. Also, uh, I think with Jean, because that's my girl, the fact that she didn't faint, yes, yes. I I think that this Jean did have the Phoenix Force because I think they're alluding to the Phoenix Force coming back, which makes Jean more powerful. So I think that we're seeing her as she recovers her memories. She's also tapping into her Omega level mutant status.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree. JT?
So, does Jean have the memories of Nathan as a baby from Maddie? So, does she have those same feelings as a or are they like hard to decipher? I don't know. I don't know if those memories were shared or not. So, does she see him as a son, but he knows that she's not his
I don't
mom?
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
I don't think so. I think the only memories she's having are the residual ones that she's picking up from
Mm-hmm.
Nathan. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
Yeah, I was
she
confused
didn't
at
have
that
any,
scene
like,
too.
she wasn't there, like, for his birth or
Yeah.
anything. That was, like, all Maddie.
Right, but she was sharing certain memories with Maddie. So I
Yeah,
wasn't sure if that was like partial or not,
he
but
makes it a point, like when they're having their astral plane battle, to like pull Maddie's memories with Nathan and say like, "These are yours. This is you," and that kind of is like the start of the story. So I think she might be aware of them because of that interaction, but they're not seeing her as her memory the same way that like their past.
well, okay. But yeah, it was I can understand that then. He was like completely dismissive of her. Get out of my head. You're not my mom.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't tell me what to do.
Exactly. You're not my mom.
You're not my mom.
Like any adopted kid, you're not my real mom.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
can't tell me what to do. Yeah. Alicia.
I think it's really cool whenever in any story we get to see the X-Men not always winning because it drives us to want to see them go for vengeance, and it also sets the stakes really high. So when Trask comes back and he starts destroying them, the moment when he literally stops Scott's optic blast with his hand and just walks towards him, slams his head into the ground, that's the moment where you go, "Oh shit, okay." Like, this is not going to be a super easy fight, and this is just one dude. We don't know what else is coming. I love the way that they built stakes in the show, and think this is a good opportunity because I have to say every single time I talk about the show, and I haven't said it yet, the animation is stunning. Like the fight sequences are always breathtaking to watch, even when they're devastating. You know, like just so beautifully done, and so much too with the sound score, all the elements involved, really making you feel the things that you need to feel in each instance, but still allowing for you to put your own spin on it. I think is really great. I like the way that they're playing this angle of Cable's sort of like, oh yeah, I'm your son, by the way. You've known me from before, but P.S. I'm your son, but we have to move on from that. And the stark difference between how he was with Scott and how he was with Maddie. You know, like with Maddie, he's like, I'm sorry, Mom. And this guy's like, okay, Dad, whatever. I don't care. We got to do stuff. Yeah. So I think Cable Sass is, I'm here for it. Even though I am starting to like ups because of this show. Don't tell anyone.
Same,
You
same.
broke up. You broke up. What was that?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I find it hysterical that we're all molded by what it is we grew up in, and even though Cable was literally born yesterday, it feels like
Mm-hmm.
he somehow like comes from the future, a Gen Xer. Like, I don't have time for this mental health bullshit, Dad. Like, things are blowing up. Like, we'll get in touch with our feelings later. There are things blowing up. We're not doing this right now. Gene, walk away. Just, I don't even have time for your bullshit right now. Okay. I'm sorry, Michelle. I'm so sorry. That's Cable, not me. So the very, very, very end of this episode, where I think it's great. Bastion sitting there. Bad guys always have to have a big room of monitors, right? Like just all around, and that's what Bastion's doing. And Sinister's all irritated, like, "Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this?" And Bastion, I thought it was great. Where he says, "Well, you've been trying since '92 to take these mofo's out.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't worked."
The shade.
Yeah,
The
just
shade.
throws it right in Sinister's face, and Sinister says, "Well, you used to be one of those guys too." And Bastion says, "Yeah, but I evolved, unlike you." Um, Mentions that there is a satellite that the X-Men use to talk to the Shi'ar, and unveils that to Sinister, like, "Oh, by the way, this is all going on." And we get this scene where somebody is strapped to a chair, and Bastion walks in, and as he walks in, the radio changes to, the Purple People Eater song is playing again. And we see that the person in the chair is Magneto. And he is strapped down, he is gagged, he has a restraining collar on. And this was such a great scene for Bastion, for the way he kind of like takes the hot rag and puts it on Eric's face to prep his face for shaving, and says, "I feel like, heat and moisture, they help and make the skin more pliable. So that way I can just make a clean cut without hurting you, provided you don't struggle and just do what you're told."
Mm-hmm.
We cut to credits. I don't even know. There's like so much to say about this, but yeah, JT, we'll start with you on this one, man.
I feel that scene was very metaphorical. So when he's talking about like the heat making the skin malleable and doing what he wants with it, I think he's talking about like mutant kind, basically, like applying the heat to mutant kind and making them do
Mm-hmm.
what his will is. But we'll see what happens in the coming episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Michelle.
Uh, Once again, I just want to point out some more optics. Uh, in that room with all the TVs, like, like they're spying basically on the X-Men to like keep tabs on them. Like this whole thing is just all about optics. Even the title, Bright Eyes, is like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. So I think I don't know. It's crazy. Also, that last scene was also like there was. I felt like there was some sexual innuendos there too. I don't know. Like I got like Daddy Kink vibes.
BDSM has entered the chat.
Yeah, there was a really funny meme somebody made. It's like when when you say you're down for like all that stuff, and then IRL, like it yeah, you're not. I forget exactly how the meme goes, but I know everybody's seen it.
How about you, Alicia?
I mean, I love what the like the pressure they're putting against, and it's like how we're manipulating you. I think it ties back into like earlier about like making you look bad, and I think that's really important for us to be aware of going forward. Um, the shaving of the face is such a power move because that is like I'm playing with you. Like I'm holding a knife right next to you and acting like everything is fine, but I literally can destroy you in a moment. And I think that that's really interesting to see how Joe handles this situation, like what he does now by that. I'm also really interested in Sinister's connection to Bastion and like the way Sinister says, like, what about the thing you promised? And I'm like, what was it? What are you getting out of this, Sinister? Like, what what do you want so badly that you're willing to work with him on? Because I would imagine Sinister who wants all the glory for themselves. So to be working with someone else who is actually puppeting you, like to have Sinister be taking orders from anybody is uncharacteristic of Sinister. So he must really want something. And I want to know what Bastion's like holding over him so badly.
Ooh, Alicia, do you think it has something to do with like creating his perfect like mutant
Yes.
society? You know, kind of like in comics with like how there was like Rasputin 6
Mm-hmm.
and there were all these hybrid mutants in the future who were battling humanoid like sentinels and how it's basically they're gonna end up going up against each other, but for now their priorities align.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think is it Nathan that he wants? Is that what he wants?
Yeah. He
Yeah,
definitely
Nathan was supposed to be like the perfect specimen.
Yeah, he definitely wants cable, and I think there's something to do with like genetics. Like Bastion has a key to something. Like he points to the fact that he upgraded himself, right? Like he's improved. So he has access to something that Sinister doesn't have access to that he wants. And I think like the idea of Mia's and like genetic alteration in some way or a way to like make himself immortal or something that gives Sinister all his desires is there. And I think that that truly is the big bad of the season. But I think that Sinister wants something that I think will play to the end of the season.
Hmm. And I sort of feel like the last several episodes, Nimrod is kind of like on stage, but with a cloak over him.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know he plays into this somehow. He hasn't been revealed yet, but we've seen him enough in the opening credits. As a matter of fact, when I was watching this episode, when Rogue first got punched by a white fist, I thought it was Nimrod, and then it showed Trask standing over, and I thought, oh, so eventually that's going to come into play. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think you guys are absolutely right because we've for so long seen um, the guy who has a name, Sinister. There it was. Sort of being the one holding all the power. And for him to allow somebody else to not only collaborate with, but also hold the reins, there's something that he wants that must be worth it. And of course, I don't know about you guys, Bastion's not going to be the guy where I'm like, yeah, handshake deal, we're good, right? I can totally trust
Yeah.
you. This won't go south at all. Um, so yeah, that brings a close to this episode. What's next is a 3-part finale. And so many people on the show have said go back to the original series and watch the show One Man's Worth
Mm-hmm.
prior to these last three. Um, if Bo DeMeo was saying that episode 5 was the tip of the spear, we're going to get it over the next 3 episodes. We are going to 100% get it. Okay, are you guys ready at the end of here for just a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm not starting an OnlyFans. Stop asking me. Michelle, do you think Jean Grey will turn into the Phoenix in the last episode, like in the intro?
I don't know when she's going to turn into the Phoenix, but I know it's coming. Yeah.
Agree. For Alicia and Justin, if you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
That's so hard. I think I want Kate's phasing power because I love that it's versatile. You know, it's like, oh, I can walk through the wall, or I can grab your heart out of your chest. You know, it has a lot of dynamics. I think that's a fun one.
I think I would say, I mean, there's an OP power that I would want would be like control of time, but that's just like that's way too overpowered. So I'd say more generic and practical one that I would like is probably Doug's. You know, being able to translate anything. That would come in so useful. You could just travel the world, do whatever you want.
Yes. This was addressed to Alicia and Justin, but Michelle, I want to hear yours too.
I already have real life mutant power, and it's luck powers, so I'm gonna hold on to that.
That's right. We've discussed this. It's not real. It's
It's
not a real power.
real.
It's definitely
It's
not
so real.
cinematic.
I've seen
According to Deadpool, not real.
Right.
No, it's real. It's real. It has
It
happened
is. I've
many
witnessed
times.
these.
Yes. Yes.
I can attest. That's real life.
Yeah. Ever since I was a kid, I whenever I was asked that question, I would always say Magneto. I want Magneto's powers because it's so versatile. As I have gotten older, and now somebody who spent 2 days walking around the con, I want a healing factor.
You want
Just
healthcare.
yes, healthcare. Just so that my back and my knees and my feet don't hurt. Like, I don't need to take bullets. Like, can I just not feel like ground beef right now? That would be amazing. Finch, do you hope or think they will give Wolverine his own episode like this one for Rogue? They have to eventually, or the show gets canceled. I'm biding my time. I recognize that. Bo DeMeo said that his original pitch to this was that it was not a Wolverine show. That's great. Like, sometimes Michael Jordan had to step aside and let the other players get their recognition too. That's okay. It's good for story. I get it. But ultimately, we know where the BD energy is. So it's gonna come. It's just a matter of time. Anything?
I mean,
you got the hat on. You can't deny me now.
I know. Look, it even says attitude on it.
Yeah. All right. Well, this will bring anything. Anybody got anything to say on the way out?
This is fun.
I think there was a question in the chat about Nate Gray and like where he fits into it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because Nate is from the Age of Apocalypse storyline, and he is the genetic child born in a tube by Sinister of Jean and Cyclops.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Nate Gray, who is X-Man from Age of Apocalypse, and then there's Nathan, or Nathaniel, who is Cable, who is naturally born from Madeline and Scott.
Mm-hmm. I didn't. Yeah, thank you for catching that. I didn't see that question in the chat. I need to clean my glasses and get better optics. But so,
optics.
Yep.
Optics.
Up your
That 32. Well, all right, folks. Hey, all of you. I want to thank you so very much for hanging out and doing this live. We're gonna move along, and like I said, we're gonna get to this 3-part gut punch, and whatever happens, folks, we will be here to console you. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everybody for joining. And yeah, I hope you all have a good night. And we will talk to you again.
You too. You too. I'm so
All right,
jealous.
bye bye.